Okay. Good evening. We'll call this meeting of the Lebanon Community School District Board of Directors to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next up on the agenda are public comments. We had one comment submitted by Monica Graves. It's published on the website and should have been emailed to everybody prior. She was urging us to do something about the requirement for athletes to wear masks when they're practicing and competing. And she and I actually had some dialogue about that, and she is also going to reach out to OSAA to get that message out there. Obviously, that's not one that we have a lot of control over, but certainly appreciate that, having a couple of student athletes myself. That's kind of a challenge. With that, next up on the agenda would be the 2019-2020 Audit Report. So, Will, I see our auditors have joined us. I'm assuming you're going to give a little intro?
Yes. Thank you, Chairman Oliver. So you have in front of you the 1920 Audit Report. For the board members that are not in person, I just sent you an electronic version, so if you check your email, it's in there, where we'll be reviewing the letter that's associated with the communication from the board, as well as the audit report. And I'd like to introduce our two auditors. Edward, would you like to introduce yourself, please?
I'm Edward Yuen, one of the lead auditors with Polly Rogers. And with us, we have Michael Alloy, who is the compliance manager, and he oversees the whole audit process. So I would also like Michael to say hi to everyone too.
Hello, everybody. Yes, I'm Michael Alloy. I'm using the Polly Rogers regular account. That's why it's got that name up there. I'm the technical reviewer on the audit. The audit senior who performed the engagement last year basically went through the entire engagement, left the firm a few weeks ago, so I'm going to be presenting the findings for everyone.
Welcome. Thank you both for being here.
Okay, so why don't we go ahead and start with the with the board letter. I've got a copy of the board letter with me, and I have the electronic version of the financial statements on the other side of me here. So let's start with the board letter, the 6-page document. It begins with the fact that we've audited the basic financial statements for your district, and then it lists the purpose of the audit. Basically, it's a three-step, 3 audits in one when we do an audit for a school district. We have the audit under generally accepted accounting principles and auditing standards, which is the basic financial statement audit. Then we have the Oregon Municipal Audit Law and related administrative rules. So that's the additional testing we have to do for you to follow audit law as the municipal entity. And then we have federal, state, and other agency rules and regulations related to expenditures of federal awards. So that's if your federal grant money, if you spend over $750,000 in one fiscal year of federal grant money, you have to do what's called a single audit, which is basically an audit of those federal funds. So we have those 3 audits that we did this year. The rest of page 1 is a description of our responsibilities under all the different the guidance that we have. At the top of page 2 of the letter is the scope and timing of the audit, and then in the middle of page 2 is the results. That's where we're going to spend a majority of the discussion. The first result is the audit opinion letter, and it says a modified opinion on the basic financial statements has been issued due to the district not having a current actuarial valuation of post-employment benefits related to the implicit health care subsidy. Now, this is the audit opinion on the basic financial statements. A modified opinion is not a downgrade. It's basically a but-for opinion. It's a clean opinion on everything except for one issue where we had to modify the opinion. The school district as a municipal entity has what's called an implicit healthcare subsidy. Basically, any of your former retirees can buy back into your health plan at a rate better than they could get on the open market. And that technically provides them a subsidy, which is supposed to be a liability that's booked on your financial statements. We can't calculate that because we're not actuaries, so we can't tell if it's too small to worry about or if it's a significant number, and it's basically missing. So what our opinion is saying, and the opinion, if you look in the audit report, it's on, at the sort of towards the beginning, it's Roman numeral page 1 through 3. And the opinion is at the top of Roman numeral page 2. And there's a basis for the modified opinion, which explains that it's because of this, basically this implicit health subsidy issue. And then the modified opinion basically says, except for that number, everything represents fairly. So it's a clean opinion except for that one item. We had a new GASB number 75, which basically says you have to record the liability of that implicit health subsidy. Most school districts have an actuary do that because they have an actuary calculating the basically the outstanding liability on the sunsetted health plan that certain employees were eligible for that people aren't anymore. Your district books that sunsetted plan at the maximum liability that it could be, so it saves you the trouble of going through an actuary, but then you don't have the implicit subsidy number on your financial statements. So that's the only reason why that's got to be a modified opinion. The actuarial report, there's a number of actuaries we can recommend for you if you would like to get it. It does cost a few $1,000s, but you only do it once every 2 years. And they take your demographic information, and for the next two years, you'd have the liability that would get booked at June 30th every year on the financial statements, and we can put that on your financials and put the footnotes in together. So that's, and then that modified opinion would go away. So that's something for the board and management to decide. The second item on the results is the state minimum standards. Now that's for the municipal law, adherence to the municipal law. So we have a second audit opinion letter in the back of the report, and I believe it is on page 52. So if you want to go to the back of the audit report, it's towards the back. Page 52. Called the Independent Auditor's Report required by Oregon State regulations. This is where we discuss all the particular things. The bulleted points are the applicable budget law areas that would apply to a school district, basically. And towards the bottom, we have the couple of findings. On the board letter, it says we found no issues or exceptions requiring comment except as noted on page 52. So on page 52, we list out the findings that we found related to municipal law. The first bullet point is our testing of teacher experience. We found that the experience for 5 teachers was underreported by the district. So that means, the teacher experience levels were not being kept correctly for a number of the test items that we looked at. And that was gone over with management at the time of the audit. The second one just basically says all your budget expenditures were within authorized appropriations except as noted. And it bounces you back to page 16. That's the part of the financial report that discusses the budget appropriation levels, and we do a listing of the 3 or 4 line items in the various funds that went over budget for the year. So at your leisure, you can go back to page 16 and you can see the actual line items that went over budget. That's the minimum standards audit report. And then the third bullet point is federal awards. We found 1 issue of non-compliance and no question costs. And then we have to express an opinion on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards and the test of the internal control system, compliance with laws, and so on. That's point number 3. That's referring to the grant compliance review, which is right after that other letter. Starts on page 54. There's a heading for grant compliance review. The first thing we show is the CFA, which is your schedule of expenditures or federal awards. This is not the amount of money you received during the school year. This is the amount of federal dollars you spent during the school year. As you can see on the second page there, its total is over 4.2 million, and because you're over 750,000, obviously, you have a single audit that was done. So we tested a couple of those programs. What you need to understand is that we not only have to do the single audit by testing major programs, but we're also operating under governmental accounting standards to do that kind of audit, and we have to also list out comments that we found about the financial statement audit in the same place. So we're actually reporting on two different things, which is why you'll see two different reporting letters starting on page 56. That two-page letter 56 and 57 is the financial statement audit under government auditing standards, and then 58 and 59 is the report on the major programs that we tested. So there's compliance with the programs, and then there's financial statement issues. And they've both been signed by the engagement partner, Roy. If you keep going to the last couple of pages, 60 and 61, this is the summary of results for the single audit. As you can see, there was the one finding was in the financial statement area. That again is the modified opinion for the missing actuarial number for that implicit health subsidy. On the federal award section, there were no findings. We didn't have any problem with the programs we tested. If you scroll down a little, there's IDEA, Special Education, and CNC, Child Nutrition Cluster. Those are two of the big three programs that you have a lot of spending dollars in. Dollar threshold between an A and a B. A type A program basically is anything over 750,000. Those have to be tested once every 3 years, whether we find anything or not. And we tested two of those three this particular year, IDEA and Child Nutrition Cluster. The Title I was tested the year before. That's the other one. Auditee qualify as low-risk auditee. That's not that you have, we check no there, and that's because you had a finding with the audit. And also you had a finding in the prior year. I'm going to get to that. But once you have a finding, you can't be considered low risk for the next two successive fiscal years. And all that really means is that when we test your CFA, in addition to testing the largest programs on a rotating basis, we have to test 40% of the total dollars. If you were a low-risk auditee, we could do 20%. The 40% means we just had to go and test the second program instead of just the one. If you scroll down to page 61, you'll actually see the findings. The financial statement finding, there it is, was the missing actuarial valuation. And we had to put at the top, you see repeat findings in 2019. So the previous auditor who audited you the year before also had this same issue. Because that GASB 75 has been in place for a couple of years now. Federal award findings in Section 3 was nothing, so we didn't have any issues with that. Both of those programs we tested were fine. Section 4 is an extra place you put in when you have prior audit findings in the previous single audit. You have to discuss, you basically have to follow up on them. So we had to see what the previous auditor had done the year before. He had a finding on the financial statements. Well, actually, let's look at 001, was the finding on a major program for Title I, which was tested the previous year. And they had found at the time that reimbursement requests were requested in advance when it's supposed to be a reimbursement grant. And we followed up. We didn't test Title I this year, but we followed up on that one aspect of the Title I grant to make sure that finding did not recur in the year we audited, 2019-2020, and we found that to be fine. So that goes as a prior audit finding. We put the status was that it was fixed. Finding 002 from the prior year, the prior auditor found a financial statement reporting issue as far as internal controls over the bank reconciliation process, that it either wasn't done timely or wasn't being reviewed timely. We have the district put new staff in place for 2019, 2020, and we would test bank reconciliations just like the prior auditor as part of our regular procedures. We did not see that recur again. So the two findings from the prior year are listed here with their status, but they'll go away next year. The finding on the actuarial report is it's gonna basically stay there until, honestly, until you get one. I don't see that issue going away because it's based on, the actuary is going to base it on, the healthcare costs of people who retire, and given how payroll is such a high percentage of expenditures for any school district, it's going to be a significant number if it's missing from the government-wide financial statement. So that's pretty much the end of the grant compliance section. There's a couple of notes there at the end about how the CFA is presented. We could go back to the board letter. Point number 4 just says no separate management letter was issued, but that's because the management letter is what you would get when... Is that me? I hope not.
Sorry about that. That was a train going by, so we're ready to go again.
Oh, wow. Okay. A management letter is what you would get for these findings if you didn't have a single audit. Because you have a single audit, it goes on the federal awards letter, so there's no separate management letter. Continuing on page 2 of the board letter, there's just some descriptions about aspects of accounting practices, how we come up with estimates, what numbers might be estimates, whether you had any little misstatements. Continuing on to page 3. That's a lot of just information about how the audit goes and different topics that might come up. On page 4 starts what we call other matters, future accounting and auditing issues. Now this is interesting in the sense that every year we alert our clients to upcoming GASB pronouncements that will become effective soon and what they might want to be watching out for. It goes from page 4 onto page 5 now. There's a group of them because with the pandemic going on, the GASB's kind of backed off implementation dates a little bit. So they're starting to, but they're not slowing down on the number of things they're coming up with. So there's sort of a backup of new pronouncements that are going to come in. I looked over your financials real quickly before this meeting. I don't think any of these necessarily are going to apply to you, at least at the moment. It doesn't mean that they won't in the future. The only one coming in for 2021 now with the delayed timing is GASB 84, fiduciary activities. You don't have any fiduciary funds on the financial statements. The other ones are all for a future year. I didn't see any operating leases, which are going away. They'll become capital leases. You don't have any to begin with. There's one for capitalizing interest costs differently if you start a big construction project, and that's all for down the road. So that's for you to kind of get the basics about, and then maybe look up on the GASB site online if you want more detail. The last thing we have is a little section that the partners at our firm here like to put in called best practices. Basically anything that doesn't rise to the level of a finding, like those other issues we discussed, are considered exit comments. And exit comments are just discussed with management at the time of the audit, little things we saw. Our partners here like to put some of the exit comments in as best practices if they think the board could benefit from hearing about them. Given that this is the first year we've audited you guys, the partner was comfortable putting these 2 in, and I'll just briefly touch on them. The first one is Fidelity insurance coverage. Basically, as a municipal entity, you're obviously required to have insurance. You're also required to have Fidelity insurance, but there's no documentation, to my knowledge, about what level you're supposed to have. Fidelity insurance is basically crime coverage or theft coverage if someone were to steal cash, an inside person were to steal cash. And honestly, the level of Fidelity insurance coverage that you get is not ever really going to cover your cash balances on the financial statements. So that's what we look at to see if we should put this comment in. Your Fidelity insurance coverage was a little bit low for what we see for school districts. It was only $100,000, considering the amount of cash on the balance sheet. The board should discuss that. We feel once a year you should have a discussion whether or not you want to go to your insurance carrier and if you're at a comfortable level of coverage or if you want to increase. We're not recommending anything in particular. I can just tell you from reviewing dozens and dozens of school districts, your coverage is a little on the low side. You're never going to have enough Fidelity coverage to cover the whole cash balance. So we usually take this comment off once we see evidence in the board minutes every year when we do audits that the board is at least discussing the topic. If we can see that, the comment would come off next year. The other one is really more of a first-year comment, governing body monitoring. It's a little reminder from the partners at our firm here about the responsibilities of the board and how they should be overseeing all the financial aspects of the audit. The more we see about the board discussing the finances and reviewing the monthly financial information, the more we see of that in the board minutes, the more we justify taking that off and getting the report, the board letter issued without that, since we don't want to keep reminding you of things you're actually doing. So that's all we could find on there. So those are the only ones we put there. That's the extent of the governing body communication, and I've pretty much hit all the key points of the financial report. Edward, did you want to share anything?
I think that I don't have anything to share right now, so thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have questions? I know we're seeing the agenda here. I'm not necessarily seeing all the people, but if anyone has a question, we can entertain those.
I do have a question. This is Todd.
Okay.
I'm on the school board.
Okay.
I come from a credit union background and our budget and audits, and for my board of directors, I always had to present where we were with our budget as far as our income and expenses by a monthly basis as to how we're tracking. With the school district, just like with my credit union, we have more money coming in at different times than others, as well as there are times of greater expenses during one month or another. My question is looking at the financial reports that are included in our board packet, I can't tell by the encumbered balance if we're on target and on track, or if we are high on expenses, low on income. What do other school districts do to report that? Is it something that the school board just takes for granted that the encumbered funds are going to handle whatever's coming down the road? I'm just accustomed to, this is our budget. We know we only get X amount of money normally during this given month. These are expected expenditures for that month. Where did we come in at? It's a way that I've been able to catch embezzlement through multiple times, is by just verifying the financials and seeing where the differences are based upon how the budget stands. So I don't know if I am just being overly cautious because of my background, or if it's something that the board should be aware of to know whether we're high or low in any of those areas.
Well, I think. Go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, from an audit perspective, how you handle things internally is your business. You have to have the budget done at a certain time, and we come in at the end and see if you've overspent or underspent for the year. I can tell you that if you're looking on a monthly basis and you see that one particular line looks like it's going to go over for whatever reason, you can do supplemental budgets as long as they're done before June 30th. They can't be done after the fact. You can move money from one line to another, or if you get an unexpected grant coming in, you would budget the additional revenue, and you can budget the expense up to that amount for where you're going to spend it so that you don't go over. You can move money out of a contingency line up into the spending lines if you think you're going to need that. There's certain limits to how much you can do, as long as, from an audit perspective, as long as it's done before year end, and then we have the adjusted numbers at June 30th, and we can see from your trial balance if you went over or not. That's where we have where we wind up with the findings with the over expenditures. They could, they could happen because you overspent in an area and weren't tracking it, or it could happen because an emergency happened and you didn't move the money around in time, or it happened after year end, something like that. So it's hard for us to say how you should be monitoring that.
So I guess my point, or let me try and restate that, is that looking at our financials, I as a board member do not know whether we're low or high on any given month because of the way that they're being presented within our board packet. It doesn't indicate that, this month we expected so much revenue or so much more in expenditures and we came in high or low. I mean, as far as the finance department goes and what Will does, he of course knows how to make those transfers or bring them to the board to get the approvals that may be needed to do a transition. I'm thinking more of an embezzlement type situation or a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we're not running thinking that all is grand and then all of a sudden find out that all along we weren't getting the revenue that we were expecting, or the expenditures went way over to what we were expecting. And so I'm looking at it more as a school board member and our responsibilities to be reviewing to make sure that the financials that we are presented with, that we're not recognizing or seeing where we really should be at that given month.
I just want to say something about that comment, because the fact is, when we are coming to audit the financial statements, we are not expecting 1/12 of a month or expenditures or things like that. So we are looking at the big picture of the whole year. So I would suggest that all the board members can ask the information and get a copy of the approved budget or adopted budget, and then make sure that every month those numbers are not going overboard to the total numbers. So that would be something that I would say the board members may be able to monitor closer in that manner, rather than coming and asking us what is the goal for each month, because we don't look at monthly, we look at the annual numbers.
And I'm not looking
Thank you, and just a point of clarification, we all have access to that information.
But I am talking about as far as the board catching an error or catching an item that hasn't been identified that we are either running long or short. I'm not speaking about the auditing process. I'm talking about the responsibility of the board and our tools to identify if there is potential issues of embezzlement or inaccurate numbers for the budget, where budget changes may need to take place. I mean, I know Will's doing his job, but I've also dealt with employees over 37 years that were doing their job and I caught them embezzling. And so I'm just looking at the bigger picture, what our responsibility is as the board, and do other districts put out budgets where it shows where you should be with your income and expenses by a month-to-month basis provided by the finance department to the school board.
I don't know. I don't typically see budget information except for the year-end stuff. We don't see any kind of month-to-month stuff.
Because in the banking world, we have to do a month-by-month income, expenses, balance sheet, and then the board gets to review, and we have to break that down with our budget on a monthly basis as to where we should be. And this is part of the NCUA requirements. Plus, the board is responsible for this. And then we, of course, have our own internal auditors, and then our annual exam by the government. So the individual auditor and exam by the government will catch any big things that maybe the board did not catch. But we were required, or I've always been required, to find out where should we be on a month-by-month basis, and are we high or low on that? And so that may just be something that's not done in the school type of budgeting or accountability to the board members.
Yeah, it could be that you'd be bringing something new to the table that isn't typically seen. I mean, as an external auditor for your district, we're not gonna see that. We're gonna see the big picture at the end of the year. So, yeah, I mean, you should have a monthly internal look at the board should be looking at monthly financial reports, but we're not gonna see them. We're not gonna know if you're over or under at a particular point throughout the year, just at the end.
I've caught multiple embezzlements. The biggest one was $2 million. And so these are reasons I ask these questions. I was also the state treasurer for the Oregon Employer Council, reporting to the governor's office, and I had 2 counties in the state of Oregon that had embezzlement going on. And the only way I caught them was by their budgets and where they were on a monthly basis. So that's where my concern comes into. And I will be quiet. That's all I had.
It's a good point. You can't rely on an external auditor once a year to catch stuff. Things could go on much longer than, on a faster basis than that. So you need the internal controls as well.
And Todd, this as well.
Thank you.
This might be an opportunity for, me to bring forward our internal control procedures. We have procedures, as you know, throughout our office that help identify any issues before they become fraudulent activity. And the auditors also review those documents as well for relative to other school districts, relative to best practices. So we have many lines of checking, if you will, in defense against the fraud. Obviously, we can't 100% say that it never happens because you just mentioned, an example. So we do our best, but I can also bring those internal procedures to the board so you can review them and take a look at them and understand what we're doing on a daily basis.
Thank you, Will.
Yeah. Can I do a quick wrap up? Yeah. Okay. Michael, Edward, we truly appreciate your time this evening. We're going to do a quick wrap up. I want to make sure to thank the business office because we put an enormous amount of time and effort into this. It wasn't just the audit. As you auditors mentioned, there were some pretty significant findings from last year, and we spent quite a bit of time to make sure that they would have those findings this year. And that was a lot of procedures and time and effort to make sure we're doing the best that we can for our taxpayer resources. So from just an overall perspective, I feel that the trend is going in the right direction. We did a decent job there. So I want to be sure to thank the business office once again. Thank you to Polly Rogers for your participation in our audit.
Yeah, thank you for presenting that. I wanted to echo what you just said, Will. Certainly, I like this report better than the one we saw last year. We obviously had a few minor things with fund balances that should be pretty easy to address moving forward. And we have had a fair amount of conversation about the driver for the modified opinion and whether we want to pay for that actuarial analysis. So I suspect we'll have that again, and thanks to the auditors for the additional suggestions on financial statements. I think I am looking at a financial statement in our board packet that we receive every month, and we do review those. So very good. With that, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which would be a discussion about the potential for a maintenance bond. Bo.
Yes, and great job, Will. You and your team, I know how hard you guys have worked down there, so I appreciate it very much. So we brought this forward. This has been an ongoing issue since I've been in the district, probably over 10 years. I'll just share with you, when I moved to the district office and took over facilities, doing an evaluation of all of our buildings and looking at our roofs and seeing what maintenance needed to be done, what the deferred maintenance was, what the tally for that was, it was significant. So we worked really hard to try to partner with everybody we could to maintain and improve our properties and do as much annual maintenance as we possibly could, as much as we were provided resource for. So it came to our attention that the state of Oregon had a program that was really geared towards probably districts similar to ours, where they will support, they will match monies. If you pass a bond, they will match it up to a certain amount. And so getting, having to pay 50 cents on the dollar for maintenance seemed really attractive to us. So we brought a team together. We put an ad hoc facilities team together, I think in the spring of 2018. Nick Brooks was a part of that. And we spent a lot of time kind of talking about what our needs were, what the long-term needs were. We got a TAP grant to go ahead and have our facilities actually reviewed by Soderstrom Architects. They brought back a plan and told us, all the things that we needed to fix, and we did that with the hopes that we could move forward to actually fix those things and make improvements. And currently, there has been and there is currently a program through the state of Oregon where if we pass a general obligation bond, there's a program where the state of Oregon will match the monies that we pass up to a certain amount. Now the money is limited, so every biennium there's a certain amount of money that's placed in there. It will be updated this next biennium, and we have an opportunity to move forward and to apply for some of those fundings. I guess my concern is that since I've been in the position as assistant superintendent, now superintendent, and know the amount of work that needs to be done in areas that you don't see, I'm concerned and would like to address some of that in a reasonable way. And I'd like to be able to do it at 50 cents on the dollar. Really, and what I'm looking at is we've spent some time talking about what this process would be. How would we go forward with doing it? It's never a good time to ask taxpayers for money, but asking when it's going to be matched by an outside entity seemed like it would be a really good idea for us to pursue. So I kind of felt like it would be irresponsible if we didn't move forward with this, because we've already went through the process. We did a long-term facility plan review. We did all the things that we need to do in order to apply for this program, but we would need the community to support it. So we took a look at our long-range plan. We kind of identified, we crosswalked those projects and took a look at a rough estimate by school, and those are provided. We'll go through his deal first, but we took a look at what are the things that are necessities, what are the things that are just luxuries. There weren't very many luxuries on there. They're all necessities. And then we wanted to frame it in a way that made sense to the community. So in this, not only is it just all maintenance, but we're also looking at adding a few classrooms at Seven Oak so we can move all of our sixth grade students to Seven Oak. And what that does is it allows us to bring preschools into our elementary schools, which we know will help us dramatically. So we had talked earlier about building a preschool, and this is just a better model for us to follow. So we crosswalked the estimate and the projects that were from the long range plan. I put them on school by school so we could kind of see where we were at with this. When we did this analysis, we did not have the pool as part of the project. The pool the aquatics district has run the pool, and basically we lease the pool to the aquatics district. They have the ability to tax and generate revenue to pay their workers there, but they really don't have any extra funds above just what general maintenance is. So the pool really needs a major renovation, and so fitting all of those things within this matching program would be a really great things for us to do. So previously, the max amount that we could get was about a $4.4 million match. Will, is that correct?
Yes.
And now for the next biennium, we're looking at possibly an $8 million match. So, if we were to pass a general obligation bond for $12 million, then we would receive another $8 million, which would give us a $20 million to work with to do some of the maintenance work that is required throughout the district. A lot of this work has not been done simply because these are long-term, replacing a roof is not something that we budget for all the time. We budget a lot for repairs, but we have not budgeted for, replacement, which typically falls under.
Can I jump in for a second,
Yeah.
Bo? I mean, we're saying maintenance, but we understand what that means, but just to make it clear, this isn't like replacing door hinges or furnace filters. This is system replacement, really, right?
Right.
We're not necessarily going out and talking about building a new school. What we're saying is these are assets that have a fixed life expectancy, and we have exhausted that. So the idea is to renew those and have them in service for another 15, 20, 30 years, 40 years, depending on the case there.
Yeah, that's perfect. I mean, if you just take a look at Lebanon High School, we have $1.3 million worth of roof repairs. We have the original boilers that are in the building that need to be replaced. We run all of our summer food services out of that kitchen, and so they need to upgrade the kitchen to be able to have the capacity to do what they need to do. Each building, I had put a security area in there because we want to take a look at our systems within the building, and that might not just be security. It might be fire prevention. It might be fire alarm, but all of those systems are extremely old. I put a little bit of site-based money so teams of people within the building would be able to take a look and see these are things that, I don't see things that they do on a day-to-day basis. The building needs to be painted. We need ADA bathrooms worked over. The showers in the locker rooms, probably 10 years ago, it was almost criminal, the situation they were in. Those are original equipment. There wasn't heating in there. There was mold growing everywhere. We've kind of tried to renovate that as much as we can, but it needs a lot of work. And Will has done a fantastic job of working. We got a seismic rehabilitation grant, so part of that work on the roof is going to be able to be fit underneath there. And so there's a big need, and I don't want to neglect it. It's a lot of work, but it's work that I want the district to be in a position where we're in a really good place for the next 10 to 15 years moving forward. And the cost, it's going to cost us way more money if we don't address these things now.
And you point out a good thing, Bo, that it has to be replaced. These systems have run their course. It's going to cost more in the future. So why not do it now when we have matching dollars? I mean, that's a tremendous win for our people in Lebanon.
Yeah.
I mean, that we're getting a lot of value for that.
And we would know prior to going out for a general obligation bond, we would know what we qualified for, and we would have that in our back pocket to be able to market with.
Yeah,
So,
I think that's huge. I mean,
yeah.
It makes people feel, a taxpayer, a lot better when someone else is chipping in And this is a great opportunity because, as we know, those systems don't become cheaper. To replace a roof in 5 years is not going to be less expensive than it is this year.
So that's kind of my spiel. I'm going to turn it over to Will because Will's done the financial part of this, and we've had some conversations, but I wanted, I kind of wanted you to know the history behind that and just why we're trying to pursue it and why we think it's important at this time to do it. Because what's going to happen is this is competitive, and we're in the maybe top third, but there's a lot of other school districts that can apply for this. This is a horrible time to go out and go for a bond. But it's the perfect time for us because we could leapfrog all these other districts and get the funding. So I don't want to not move forward if we have support and we can figure out how to do this. So Will, I'll throw it your way.
Yeah, thank you, Will. So a couple of additional pieces I thought would be helpful for the board. This is basically this would be a 20-year issue, okay? And so what we're looking at is tax exempt and treasury rates. What I wanted to show on this, or asked to show on this, was where we're at as far as interest rates. You hear about bumps in interest rates and things like that. As you can see, we're very low. No matter where you issue, when we're down here, is a good deal for the district. I think of the 10-year treasuries in that the average is in that 5.5% range over the long term, and look at where our rates are right now, very low. So that's definitely in the district's benefit, to the district's benefit. We'll go to the next slide, the graph. Yeah, perfect, thank you. So this is our current debt service schedule. Yellow is on the right-hand side. Yellow is what our current debt service is prior to the 2019 refunding. So we went in and refunded a bunch of bonds, as you can see, over half in many cases in 2019, and it brought that debt service down. As you can see, the trend is going in a direction where the debt service is lower and lower as we refinance over a period of time. So that creates a potential opportunity for us. If we go to the next slide, we'll see what this looks like if we choose to add a bond on. What we looked at, and this is just a preliminary, our team thought this was a nice sweet spot to come in, which is a $2 per 1,000 levy rate, and that ended up with a $16.2 million bond. And what that does is the dark gray section is on the right-hand side, under the aquamarine blue. That is our current debt service, and the blue is what debt service we add to if we were to pass a bond in November of 21. And then you would add a little, so that goes out 7-8 years, and then you add a little bit to the bottom. So there's not a huge drop-off. Our current debt service, if we don't have any additional, we're going to drop off that cliff in, that would be 2030. Yep. So that's not something that I think anybody would advise, because we would rather be more proactive on the front end of that and get some addition to engage with the taxpayers earlier rather than later. So this is just showing what a general obligation bond would be, $2 per 1,000, and it would create $16.2 million for the district, and that is over and above the match. Let's see, the next graph shows, I thought this was kind of a good one, shows kind of where we're at from a district bond rate perspective. This changes pretty consistently. For example, I know that Bethel is a little bit behind us, but they're in the process of issuing a $99 million bond, so they'll go up. So these are pretty consistently up and down, but this is kind of the trend. We're right about the lower middle, if you will. If you take the whole state into account, we're definitely in the lower middle. S&P, when we got rated in our refunding bonds, was commenting about how low our debt service is compared to any of our comparator districts. So I just thought this was a helpful slide.
So hey, Will, just for just general comparison, Bethel's doing a $99 million bond. I'm assuming they're building multiple new facilities, right? And so that's one possible scenario for us if we do not invest in the current facilities, right? I mean, at some point in time, by not renewing those systems, you're faced with a much bigger challenge.
Absolutely. So you look at it, it's deferred maintenance does not get better with time. It's not like wine or anything else. You know, you look at it, and the roof leak gets worse, and then it gets more catastrophic. So when we talk about roofs and things like that, outer shell structures, that's absolutely mission critical that we're repairing those in a timely manner, which we have been. But then we're on a proper replacement schedule. The roofs that we're talking about in this bond are in dire need right now, from a perspective of we got to replace them. So, and I think that's something that Bo was mentioning. It's you know, I think there's kind of a connotation about deferred maintenance from a perspective of, to your point, Chairman Oliver, this isn't lightweight stuff. This is ripping up roofs and replacing them with modern materials that will resist the environment that we currently live in. Right? We have a lot of rain. Let's call that out. So when we need roofs that can repel that in our schools, and for the bottom line, protecting our outer shells. So those are the 4 slides. I think that the whole idea that we will apply for the matching grant just to make sure that we're in the hunt, if you will, for those dollars. July 1st is the first opportunity or the only opportunity to apply for the November 21 grant. And we've applied for those funds before, and we've received approximately the 60% range of all of the options that were available to us. So if we're in that category again, we're looking at between $4 and $6 million in additional matching funds, which is pretty exciting. So we kind of summarize: low interest rates. We have an opportunity to fill in the gap, if you will, of some savings that we've already made for the taxpayer. We have the match, which is pretty exciting. So we could potentially have kind of a win-win-win for everybody. And we're meeting the needs of the district, hitting those roofs, hitting those areas that need some additional support.
Thank you, Will. So tonight we're not asking for approval to move forward with a bond measure. What we're talking about would be next steps in terms of one, applying for the OSCOM match, so we'd preserve our place in line and have some clarity on whether that's going to fly or not. And then 2 would be some further engagement with the community to understand, you know, the items on the list that Superintendent Yates presented come from our facilities master plans, right? And so that's been a long-term process to develop those. They've been vetted by staff and the facilities committee a couple of years ago now. So, but that doesn't mean that that's the end result, right? We want to engage with our constituents and understand if there are other things that people want to see or what the interest is. I mean, ultimately, this isn't our decision. The voters decide whether this happens. So I guess editorially, I see it as our obligation to give them that opportunity and work through the process.
I think it's a good idea to move forward on. Absolutely. You know, I kind of believe that we're set to, I hope, the economy is going to break out of COVID and things are going to dramatically improve. I like the fact that we have an opportunity to receive money to help match. And, I mean, some of our schools are not that old. Thankfully, the cost to upgrade that system is more cost effective today than 5 years from now. And to the detriment, you know, if a roof fails, there's other systems that affects. So it's being proactive, but you're right, Tom. I think we ought to let the community make that decision. So it's a great opportunity to put it before them. And I think we ought to market it. I think we ought to really try to get this driven home.
The one big ticket item that is on here would be refurbishing the pool. Pools are incredibly expensive. Our pool is in a position right now where it needs to have some work done to it significant. Basically, replace the inside, put new, basically we'd be building a new pool within the structure that we have there. And that's a multi-million-dollar project, probably $4 to $6 million in that range. So, when you look at, the totality of what we need to do, I think it would be incredibly sad for the community if we weren't able to offer that to our community.
I think they will have buy-in on that. This is a community item, and this is a great time to move forward on it. There's extra money.
Yeah.
It's a great thing the community loves.
Yeah, that pool is exactly the same as it was when I was a kid. Right?
Oh, no, there's a few improvements.
Maybe.
I wonder what they are.
All right, yes.
But
I'm just thinking walking through the locker rooms, it's
core
original
structure.
equipment.
Well, in the reality there, just like any of our other facilities, at some point something has to be done with it. It's going to cost money, one way or the other. So, are we looking to make an improvement and pay 50 cents on the dollar, or are we going to kick the can down the road and wait till we're backed into the corner?
And then we're paying 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
I definitely agree that we need to take advantage of matching dollars. However, also with that being said, not all of the bond we're looking at is matching. We're going higher than what they are saying they will match, if I understand correctly. My concern is that I know that COVID has put a lot of people working less hours or unemployed. For me, at $2 per thousand is going to put me at $738 more a month on property taxes, or a year on property taxes, pushing me to just under $5,000 a year for my home. And I'm thinking that we probably need to try and tier this, as we've done in the past, as to what priorities. So when we take a look at it, if we don't go for the full amount, what amount do we really need to go for to make sure that the majority of the most critical issues are taken care of? I just don't know if the community is in a place that they would be willing to go to the $2 per thousand in value. I don't want to go out and get the reputation that we're asking for money all the time, which we haven't been. We've refinanced existing bonds and have saved money. But I would rather make sure that we at least got an approval by the community for whatever highest dollar amount we possibly can. But I don't want to price this out where it's going to be defeated.
That's a good point, Todd, and I think that speaks to exactly why the next step in parallel with the application for the OSCOM grant is that community engagement to make sure we understand what people are willing to support before we go too much further.
I also was wondering about the pool. The swimming pool is for our community. Is this something that we need to go to the city with and see what availabilities that they have, that it doesn't just all fall? I mean, we're all taxpayers, be it city or school, but it does come across differently for different people. Those that don't have kids in school, they may vote no. But if they stop and think about the fact that they themselves may use the swimming pool, then we get more buy-in. So are we having other entities that can help with some of the areas? I think it's just basically the swimming pool. And the other question I had was a clarifying question is, Was the aquatic district going out after their own bond? Or in that news article were they referencing the bond that we're trying to get together to get presented?
I think that's to be determined, Todd. Part of that engagement is also continuing the conversations with the aquatics district and understanding and making sure we're aligned with their long-term goal, because I think it would be unlikely that there would be support for multiple bonds that address the needs of that facility.
Yeah, that's exactly my concern, Tom, is I don't want to be competing against the aquatic district. We need to work together in tandem along with this city, I believe, just to make sure, because everything will get defeated if we don't do this strategically correct.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Todd. I've been working with the aquatics group, and they're coming back with some revised plans, so we can take a look and see where, what their plan is moving forward, because, it is our property. So as soon as we have more information, they just weren't able to get their design architect, they weren't able to get those drawings to us for this meeting. So as soon as we know more, I'll provide you with more information. But yeah, our goal is the best thing for our community is for us to work together and be that, with the aquatics group, with the city, with anybody else that wants to partner with us. We're trying to, keep as many resources, keep them as cheap as possible for everybody. So we'll be working with the aquatics group on that.
And Bo, thank you for working with them so far. I know you've been a big part of that, and I appreciate your efforts.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks,
you have what you need?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Thanks, Will. Next up, our favorite topic.
Yeah, operations.
COVID.
So
The latest.
Yes, we started instruction with our K through 8 this week, and it's went really well. No huge hiccups at this point. Every school has just done a fantastic job, as have parents and teachers and everyone trying to figure out, how do we make this work? How do we keep things as safe and functional as possible? And I feel like we've made improvements every day. The principals have done an awesome job of implementing their plans and working with people within their building. This next week we will be starting with our high school plan. And I realize, our high school and middle school, those are extremely challenging plans to put in place. We have, at the high school, you have, only 40% of your teachers are core teachers. At the middle school, it's 60%. So, you're trying to figure out cohorts and how things could work and how can we transition from one model to another model if we have an outbreak. So there's lots of things that we have to contend with. And I think that's part of the reason that the governor came out with her announcement of the expectation that we provide in-person instruction, is that a lot of school districts were not going to move forward with taking high school or middle school kids back because it was just too complex given the guidelines that have been presented us. So we've worked really hard to try to come up with something that works, and we know that it is not perfect. We know it's not acceptable for people, but it really is something that we feel like at least we can get kids coming back to school. And I feel like there's going to be some but there are going to be some refinements to the rules that we have to use. We had a superintendent's meeting earlier in the week, and ODE Colt Gill kind of shared with us that along with the governor's, ask that we bring kids back. There needed to be some change with some of the metrics and some of the things that we have to, the standards that we have to work within, which would be our cohorting, which would be the minimum number of, feet between students. And we anticipate that there's going to be some updating within the next week. And so our plans at both the middle school and the high school are built to be able to be flexible enough to take that flexibility and have more time with kids. Also with our students at the elementaries, we're looking for ways to, we have kids that, we have numbers that we're at right now. We have more kids that want to come back to in-person instruction. With the updated guidance, perhaps we'll be able to move those kids back in by the, at the back end of spring break. So we're looking at every single opportunity for us to help re-engage our kids and build something, make things more normal for students. So that, I wish I could tell you this is what it's going to be, because every time that we do something and move forward, there's a change from the state on what we should do or what we have to do. So there will be some guidance coming out next week. I anticipate that it's going to allow us to be more aggressive with getting our kids back into more in-person instruction, and we'll move forward as we're allowed to do so. So I guess I'm asking for a little patience to appreciate how hard everybody is working to try to make this work for us as we move forward. And then I want parents and people to know that we know how important it is for our kids to be in the buildings, and that's where we want them. And also, we understand how much catch-up we have to do, how much support there is out there for us. And we have plans that we'll implement moving forward, but it's hard to do that until we really get reduced guidance on what we can do. So
it's that 100-student cohort that really kills us at the high school, right? I mean, as it sits right now, those students are basically doing CDL, and then they come into the building 2 days a week for support. If we get beyond, if that is relaxed, we can pivot fairly reasonably to a more traditional schedule. And we're not unique in this. Any high school our size is in the same.
Yeah, any comprehensive high school that is a 5A, 4A school is doing the same type of deal, but a lot of school districts are just kind of punting until we get reduced requirements. And as you take a look at, we have 6 periods and how many kids in each class, and within 2 classes you've broken through 100 person cohort. So I'm hoping that what we're going to get is elimination of cohorting, and then also some new guidance on social distancing and some flexibility on that, which would allow us to really make some significant changes.
And to clarify that, we're doing more than hoping. We're pushing that message back uphill that our community is ready to be back in school. Our kids need it. Let's make this happen. We can't control it, but we can send the message.
No, absolutely. And from, the communication that I feel that is coming from Salem is, get off your hands and start doing stuff now.
Yep.
Right? So, but you can't do that until you get the relaxed guidance. So that's the next thing that's going to come. Usually you get the orders first and then you get the rules second, so they never come at the same time, but we're anticipating some updated guidance, hopefully early next week. And if not, it will be right before spring break. So we'll grind through it and do what we need to do.
Present. Yep.
Exactly. So that's where we're at.
Just add something there real briefly. The issue that I saw come through was that at the high school, the classes now are still online. It's still distance learning. And even though they're going back within their cohorts as part of the hybrid model, the class time is actually 10 minutes less. So now we're distance learning and it's less time, and the cohorts aren't actually addressing the class work. The class is still online, and I think that's very frustrating. And from the parental perspective, I can see why people would just throw up their hands and say, why bother? And that's kind of where I'm at when I look at my kiddo's schedule. Why bother? 10 minutes less is kind of a big deal when it was a short class to begin with.
Yeah, Tammy, I would just say I agree with you, right? But we've got to get going and moving forward and getting kids back into school, and I'm hoping that we will be able to change that sooner rather than later.
Oh, how is transportation doing as we work to try and get everyone back into school? How's that going as far as social distancing on the school buses?
Yeah, they're doing a fantastic job. They're hustling. We have, every time something comes up, they have to reschedule, Todd. But our transportation department is just unbelievable. So I couldn't be more proud of what they've been able to do. They're not only getting kids moved from point A to point B, but then they're getting the buses scrubbed down before they come back to the lot. And it's just a ton of things that are going on continuously.
Okay.
That's great to hear.
And I think I'll just share as well, there was some updated guidance that came out today from OSAA, I believe, on spectators for sporting events. So I think there'll be something coming out fairly quickly on that as well.
So we can actually watch an event and not be relegated to all get in each other's cars and watch from the parking lot?
Perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps.
Okay. That would be great. All right, let's see. Next up, award RFP for construction manager. So we talked about this last month. I think everybody should be up to speed. So Will?
Chairman, all members of the board, we're asking for approval for the CMGC RFP for the seismic upgrade project for Lebanon High School. The district team, as well as our construction manager, went through a comprehensive process of reviewing the 3 candidates, and we would like to bring forward the name Girding Builders LLC for approval of the RFP.
Okay. So that, I think there's probably not much more than that. We'll follow the usual process. So unless anybody has any questions for Will, I'd entertain a motion to approve the contract to Girding Builders.
So moved.
I make the motion to approve.
Okay, you can have it, Todd. Richards?
I'll second.
Perfect. All right, any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Thank you. We'll look forward to having that work done.
Good job, Will.
Yep, that's another one.
Another way.
That's always a process. And now the fun starts. Okay. Well, I guess you're going to stay put because you want to spend some more money next.
Yeah, exactly.
Last month you updated us on a parcel at 800 Keys Street, and we gave the approval to enter into contract. So there was one condition of closing, and that would be final board approval. So I suppose I'll shut up and let you share what you'd like with the group.
So nothing's really changed since then. We have done all of the appropriate property review. So asbestos, the appropriate water, wetlands, etc. review. Nothing that is out of the ordinary. Of course, the facility itself has asbestos, but we're going to knock that down. So at the end of the day, that doesn't impact us at all. This is really a fantastic deal for our students and a fantastic deal for our community. And so I can go over the details, but the bottom line is it's a 1.8 acre piece of property. We can divide it up to 12 lots. With that, our construction 2 class and really our construction 1 class have the opportunity of doing things that no other program in the state do. It's not just building a house now, it's developing a property and helping a community to get better. So it's pretty cool. We're looking at between $80,000 to $100,000 depending on the lot size. Once we get this developed, as we mentioned, there will be some additional funding requested. This initial purchase will be paid for out of the proceeds from the duplex sale. And then at some point, we'll be coming back to the board for additional resources to develop the project. You got to put the appropriate infrastructure in, so utilities, sidewalks, streets, things like that. Once that's developed, the property is really built at that point. And we can start either selling lots, subdividing when they don't have lot pieces there. $251,000 is the price out the door, and that's what we're requesting tonight is the board to approve that purchase.
Okay, thank you, Will. Anybody have any questions for staff?
Yeah, I did. In looking at the presentation in the board packet, I realized we're utilizing the funds of the duplex to purchase the property. And then I know that we're going to come back and we'll need to take funds from the general fund to develop the property. And that was estimated as high as $400,000. But then we still would need, on top of the $400,000, the funds to build the first home, if I understand that correctly.
That would be correct, Todd. I think there are many options once the project has been, the property has been developed. We can sell some of the lots to refund the $400,000 and then make enough money to cover the first or second homes. So we'll look into all of the options. Once the project...
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure I was understanding it correctly.
Yes, you are.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to approve the purchase of the property at 800 Key Street.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? Very good. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Just say real quickly, I want to thank Eric Fraser. I'm the one that's presenting in front of you, but Eric Fraser is really the one who put this deal together for the district. So all the kudos can join him. We should have thanked him. So,
He has been doing some work behind the scenes. I have it on good authority. He's already talking to the power company and making sure that everything there is squared away. So
It's a great CTE program we got going.
all right. Naming of the Lebanon Community Pool. So we have had a request to name the pool. Bo, are you speaking to this one? I didn't see anything specific
I certainly
in the
could.
packet.
Yeah, we just, I think this is the final that we'd just like to move forward with naming the pool after Jan. She is the pool and deserves that, and yeah. So we just need some board approval to make this happen. I think we'll kind of take under advisement what the proper what that'll actually look like.
Sure.
So we'll come back and provide that to you. But it's an awesome thing. So
I
really
would
support
agree. It's nice to see some recognition for some of our longtime community members that have contributed immensely over their lives. So if nobody else has anything else to add, I would entertain a motion to approve naming of the pool after Jan Nadig.
It is with honor that I would like to make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed? All right. Very good. Thank you. Okay. Next up, Superintendent's recommendations for renewal and non-renewal. So you should have received a list of names that were put forth. Anybody have any questions for staff?
I do not.
If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the superintendent's recommendations for renewal and non-renewal as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay. Consent agenda, February 11th, 2021 meeting minutes.
I'll make a motion, we accept the consent agenda as presented.
Is your motion
Posted.
to accept it in its entirety, including
Yes,
second reading?
yes.
Great. Thank you. Do we have a second?
I will second.
Thank you, Todd. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Excellent. Then next up, we have department reports. Anything left in operations to talk about, Bo?
Well, yes.
I mean, there always is.
There always is, right? I guess I just want to go back and just, our transportation, food services, custodial, maintenance, they've just worked incredibly hard to make it possible for us to get our kids back. So I want to thank them from the bottom of my heart because they've done just a fantastic job, and I know they'll continue to do so. So yeah, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Kim?
All this waiting.
All this waiting.
Things are pretty quiet in HR these days?
No. Wish so. We've been working very closely with the unions to make it a successful transition, bring the students back. The staff members have been amazing, and we're excited that we're moving that direction. I know that we hear a lot about that there aren't any jobs out there, but I'm here to tell you that we have 24 postings, and we are having a hard time finding qualified applicants. So, if y'all know anybody, send them our direction. Of course, some of those positions are substitute positions that we also have, and a few extra duty. But for the most part, we are needing individuals to help out in our schools with the Lebanon online, as well as being in person. So.
It seems like we are not alone in that struggle. I've heard from some peers that many other districts are fighting the same battle.
I'm finding it everywhere. I
Yep.
mean, not even just school districts. I mean, everywhere you go, we are hiring signs.
Yep.
Any questions that you have of me? Okay.
I think so.
Thank
you.
Thanks, Kimmy.
All right, Will. This is like trip number 12 to the table.
Chairman Oliver, members of the board, appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about the financials. Just kind of give you an update on the cash flow perspective. If you saw the financials, the ending fund balance is coming down a little bit, which means basically Kim is hiring people. Kim and her team, it's interesting. You go by the whiteboard in our building, and used to be you couldn't see any of the white part of it. It was all just the posting. So we're hiring people in that, and also purchasing supplies to help our kids be successful. So we're drawing down that ending fund balance. I'll start doing some estimates as we get closer to the end of the year. I think anything before then would be not a good use of time because the math doesn't work out because it's kind of an accidental thing. So from a perspective, I think we're a little under $8 million ending fund balance right now. We'll start spending that, keep spending that down through the end of the year. I imagine we're probably going to land in that $6 million range is probably where we'll end up. And as I mentioned, Todd, I'll bring back some information next month in regards to our internal procedures. I think that's a great review for all of us. What we do for fraud prevention throughout the district is something that we train on. It's not just the business office, it's every office manager, secretaries. We're consistently looking at this from a perspective, trying to keep our taxpayer dollars free from fraud. That's all I have.
I appreciate it, Will, but don't do it just on my account. I appreciate everything that you do. I just needed to ask some clarifying questions to make sure I'm doing my job as a board member.
I understand.
Okay,
Any questions?
Yes, sir.
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next up, board communication. Anybody have anything for the good of the order?
Have we heard anything on OSBA and this summer, July, Ben?
Not
yet.
Not confirmed. I think it's going to be virtual,
Okay.
or at least partly virtual.
Can I still have a hotel room over there? Had to ask.
Did you have something, Todd?
I did have a couple things I wanted to share. I put a post out on the Buzz on Facebook to find out what people are thinking within our community. I asked them to private message me. The response, I was up, I posted it yesterday afternoon. I fell asleep at 5 a.m., still responding. I woke up 2 hours later, had 33 more private messages to respond to. The bulk of all of the response has been very positive. The items that have been brought up are good items, things for us to think about, and I'll be presenting this information on over to Bo. But the community involvement responded well, and there are some things I hadn't thought of that they brought to my attention. I also had a total of 3 phone calls from people from that post. And so, everyone, of course, wants us to get middle school and high school back to full days. And I assured everyone, that's all of our goal. We all want that. But I will be visiting Bo with you. I've written down every single item that was addressed or questioned to me. I'm glad I went out and asked, but the information, we have a lot of active parents, teachers, certified staff from all over with some ideas. And again, the bulk of them had kudos that they started out with, and we're extremely pleased with how we've been handling things. And then they would make their suggestions or a couple questions known. The one thing I think, though, that I'm concerned with, especially from the last meeting, is that the public's not aware of the format of how the board meetings are. And I did share the link to OSBA that showed that the board meetings are for the board members. And the audience is there for transparency, to view, to watch. But a lot of people were concerned that we never answer or respond to their letters, their comments. And I indicated, as OSBA suggests, that we should not be responding to public comments, because if it's off a whole different subject line than what was on the agenda, we now have not allowed the rest of the community to be in attendance or to be viewing, and therefore those items that we need to follow through with come board comments at the end of our meeting is when we as board members need to speak up and say, hey, do we at our next board meeting need to discuss this so it becomes an agenda item? So I think a lot of miscommunication within our community is just not understanding or knowing what the meeting is about or the format of the meeting. I mean, even in OSBA, it says we don't have to offer public comment. That would be insane. I don't know what school district would ever do that. We have to know what the public's thinking, be it a parent or just a community member. And so I do think, though, that we do need to be aware and try to help provide that educational opportunity as to how our meeting process takes place. I think there was a big misconception that because we didn't read or answer every single public comment at the time it was made, that they were not being heard. And so I tried to explain that. And I just, it concerns me or it bothered me to think that people felt that we didn't care because we made no comment after they either spoke or during the COVID crisis have been presenting their thoughts and their information in written format. So, I think that's one thing that we just need to be aware of. We may need to bring that up at different times when the comments are presented. I just think that was a big area for the public not believing that they are being heard. And so just wanted to give you an update there. Have a few items to go over with Bo, but just wanted to add that caveat to the meeting. And I can't thank those that replied to me, reached out to me, be it staff or parents. It's been most beneficial, and I do take it serious because I know every board member and every administration within our school district, we all take a very, very high concern level to make sure that everybody is heard and recognized. So I just wanted to bring that up. Thank you.
Thanks, Todd. All right. Anybody else? Bo? One more shot?
Yeah.
You sure?
Come
on, you got to have something left in there.
Yeah, exactly. I just wanted to real quickly welcome Steve Woodcock and Suzanne Stefani to our team. Both excellent administrators, and they're going to help us to be better. So I just couldn't be more excited about having them be a part of Lebanon School District. That's it.
I look forward to it as well. All right. Well, then with that, we are going to adjourn. Board members, we do have an executive session that we will plan on starting here in about 10 minutes. So thank you, everybody.